And good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We are at episode 46 for my cinema podcast, brought to you by Dark Matter TV. Dark Matter TV is a streaming platform where you can find not just current genre entertainment in horror, sci-fi, thriller, and action, but also classic content that takes you back to the great old days of late night cable and finding those cult and classic films that they just don't make anymore. Available for download on Android or Apple, or visit darkmattertv.com. It's free, it's fun, and it's gonna grow. This week's episode is a fantastic interview with filmmakers Joe Pomarico and his wife Christine James Walker, and they have a fantastic motion picture called Mentally Apart, which you can find on Amazon. They made the film on their own, finding their own financing, and most of all, made a film, which I have seen the movie. They have made a film that is uniquely different. This is very much a tip of the hat to David Lynch. Eraserhead comes to mind, even Polanski's Repulsion. This is a very stylistic film that evokes, even in its photography, a very Blade Runner kind of Ridley Scott feel to it as well. As you know, cinema is not about film reviews. I would love for you to go out there and rent the film, support two fantastic indie filmmakers that are getting the job done. What you will learn from this interview is about dedication and, most of all, traversing some pretty treacherous waters to not only just get this thing made, but to get it out there. So if you're a filmmaker with something already in the can or about to be in the can, and you know what this is like, working on budgets, improvising, doing whatever it takes to get this thing done, you also know that once you have it done, there's a whole other issue of getting it out there. So please enjoy this interview and check out their film, Mentally Apart, available on Amazon. The link to the film is in my show notes.
I'm Joe Pomarico. I'm the writer, director, editor, executive producer of Mentally Apart. It's a new feature film we just completed.
And I'm Christine James Walker. I'm starring in Mentally Apart, and I also am an executive producer.
Well, it's great to have you both on here. And I'm going to start this episode out because you're really the first pandemic interview that I've done for this show.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm making mention of that is it is already hard enough to make a movie under normal circumstances, let alone against the backdrop of a pandemic and shutdowns. And now, even though your film is done, I would love for you to be able to tell people eventually in this interview how you're navigating the waters in the sale of this film. How did you do it?
We had quite a story for you. First off, thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it. I had another script written, actually, and it's a Western. And that's been in development for a few years now. And it's something of a big budget type of project, where you need big money. And I always said to Christine that, just getting that money alone when you're a first-time director, and I say first-time meaning like first-time feature director, because I've done numerous short films in the past. I said, we got to make something that's marketable to show what it is we can do with practically nothing. It's like, because we're in a situation where, chances are you're not going to get $1 million for a budget if you haven't done a full feature. What if I was sitting on the couch and I was just like, what if we just did a movie about a couple in an apartment? We decided to tell a story that could relate to most people who have been in relationships. Like, we're keeping the plot simple. We're keeping the locations to a minimum, which was just one location, because you got to think about budget and what you have to work with, what limited resources you have to work with. It started turning out as like, a couple, they start out, like how any relationship is. It's like everyone's happy. It's like a fairy tale. And then, not all, but I'd say most, because, people go through breakups and things like that. Around the 6-month mark, it probably kind of starts to slow down and diminish a little bit. And you start to realize, maybe this is not the person right for me. We decided to add this psychological thriller aspect in the mix. We wanted to like twist people's minds and, somehow try to make it as, make it somewhat of a wild ride in just one location, because people tend to get bored easily, if it's just two actors and you just never go anyplace else. I mean, that's kind of like the process with writing, was trying to think of ways to entertain everybody.
So basically, where we went from there was once the story was written, it was developed in a couple of months. We went back and forth. We developed the story, the concepts. Joe wrote, obviously, the script, but we collaborated. And this whole movie was, everybody pulled a lot of favors. So, it was Joe and I and Larry Bernardo, who also is starring in it with me. We used his house as our location. So pretty much whatever we had at our disposal for the budget, we used, our own clothing, our own makeup. We didn't have a hair and makeup person. I basically used props that I could conjure up around the house, or the prop budget was very small. We had a very, very limited crew. Obviously, we needed a professional sound person, but it was a lot of favors. Everyone wore like 30 to 50 hats each. We all had a ton of responsibilities. Pretty much like 4 people in total were doing the job of 200 people.
I mean, the thing is too, for filmmakers who are trying to just, make something, like, that's what we did. Like we worked on big budget productions. We worked with, famous people. I used to be Spike Lee's assistant, so I've been close next to him. I see how it works. I know how it works in the corporate office. I see how the budgeting works. I see how, so I've already had all that experience. What things do you really need, and how can you get them? Like when we're talking about crews, these were friends of ours, right? Friends of ours, some of us have went to college with. Basically, like how we got everyone together is that we wrote out contracts. Some people got paid up front, and then some people get some points on the back end, because when we distribute it, then they get their percentages. So that's one way of trying to gather a crew, because nowadays, especially the independent film community, I do see it drastically changing, because I understand like everybody wants to get paid, even though like if you haven't had the experience yet, it's a good incentive to offer like, back end points and work from there, so that certain people that are new to it can get the experience.
You need good actors, you need a good story, you need a good camera, and you need sound. Joe actually had been in contact with Sasha Blanc, who is a composer from Germany, and he had found Joe on IMDb on a project that was in development, and they had started talking. We've never even met Sasha in person, but he's a tremendous composer, and working back and forth, that was pretty much how the music was developed, and that was a huge plus. And that elevates the film's quality and caliber so much.
When making a movie, it's like, and you have to know what you have and what you don't have, so you got to write it to that thing, with that in the back of your mind. I've done short films that had a bigger budget than this feature, and it's sometimes, and it felt nicer then, because I had all the toys I could work with, like your dolly and camera cranes and all that stuff. But with the feature, it's like, you just got to work with what you got. And, our budget was only $7,000. That's another ongoing thing. It's like you tell somebody, oh yeah, so we did this feature for 7,000, and they're like, what'd you shoot on an iPhone?
And not only that, but features with 7K, I mean, it's unheard of. And if it is something that someone does, people just expect it to be so terrible. So people don't even give it, a lot of independent film gets a bad reputation because people, they're trying. I'm not putting anybody down, because I've been in movies that are kind of unwatchable just because people didn't know it was, it's hard to make a movie. I mean, we ran into a lot of problems because we had 10 days to shoot it, and there's a lot of content there. And then Joe and Larry built a dolly.
You do get what you pay for sometimes.
Yeah. We had
Yes.
a lot of obstacles from day one. The camera was giving us issues every time we rolled for long, because our movie is long dialogue scenes. So when the camera started to overheat, which we didn't know that the camera package that we, because we got a camera package for a very good price, but with that, we didn't know until it was too late that the camera would overheat, and the fan
The
would be
internal fan.
the internal fan was so
So-
loud, and then it would automatically shut off right when we had the
Yeah.
gold.
So we shot it with a broken camera pretty much from day one
Oh,
to the end. So I didn't even like get the camera till the night before, and you know, unbeknownst to me, is that the right
Yeah.
phrasing? That the internal fan was busted. So when it would record, it would overheat within a minute and a half, and it did that every time we recorded. And then sometimes we had to hold the camera out the window just to cool it down because it was cold. Yeah, and we had Christine, you know, and Larry. They had very emotional. Christine mostly had very emotional takes, and it would be, you know, it would suck.
We had to ADR because of the whole thing with the fan. The problem there, that was just one obstacle. We had to ADR, and I'm not trained in ADR or any of that. Joe had to really use his directorial skills to help me get there for that. And we did all of that in the apartment with a microphone that I had because I used to sing in a band. And we did it all right here in our apartment. And it, you know, that was a whole new technique and craft that I learned just from this project.
Know exactly what you want before you start. People usually gather together and like try to figure out a shot. It's like if you're the director, if you're the writer, if you're whatever you're doing, you stick with it. You should know exactly what you're gonna do. And the more people involved, the more cooks in the kitchen, I guess, to sound a little cliche. It's just gonna create more time wasted. You're gonna lose money. You know, it's not gonna turn out the way you want it to. You know. So I always urge people, like, when they're gonna make a movie, know exactly what you're gonna do. And if a problem happens, if there's an issue, just solve it immediately. Learn how to solve it immediately.
Joe would, you know, make the shot lists, know what we were going to do. And then, like, let's say the dolly was making too much noise because it was made from a couple pieces of wood and some screws and some little roller skate wheels that, you know,
Gotta save the money.
yeah, Home Depot, homemade dolly there. And, you know, things like that. Okay, you alter the shot, but you still stick to an artistic vision and you don't make it a big deal. You hit, you know, and that was something that we were encountering a lot.
In this business now, the way it's become that, you know, everybody wants to be a filmmaker, right?
I've noticed with the festival circuit, we tried to, you know, go the festival route, and it's kind of like a catch-22 now with the festivals, which is very strange to me because when I started in this industry, the festivals were a place for independent, unknown, upcoming filmmakers to get discovered, to be recognized, to be given the opportunities to work on a bigger budget project and get funding for the next thing. And now what I'm noticing is that filmmakers like us are not being accepted into these festivals because we don't have A-list actors and we're unknowns. And but I thought that was the whole point of a festival, and it's not anymore. In order to get into a festival like Sundance or SXSW or Tribeca, or, you know, I just don't understand why you have to have A-list actors with a well-known director, with a well-known producer in order to get into the festival. What's the point of having a festival then if for the independent filmmakers? How are we supposed to, as independent filmmakers, as actors that, you know, because I've done the auditions, I've done the other independent films, I've done the one-liners on big productions, I've done all that, but it's like, after a while, I want something with substance. That's another catch-22 as an actor and as a filmmaker. You have to make your own project, but then when you make your own project and it actually has value and it is something that can show your range as an artist, no matter what, you know, you're doing, directing, acting, whatever, how do you bridge that gap when you used to be able to use the film festival circuit as your vehicle? Where's your playground now? How do you get it out there? Because with streaming too, you need that third party distribution. You need all these things. So it's really, it's like once you
gotta watch out for.
actually complete the film and then you have your product, how do you get it to market? how do you avoid the scams? And this is something that we've been facing, and we self-distributed on Amazon. And we had a sales rep and everything that we could have gone through, but this is the problem going that route, is that at the end of the day, there's all these fees and all these deductions.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, then like in the contracts, like you can audit the person,
Yeah.
but like, oh, I have I just spent $7,000 on a movie,
and they know this, and that's why they can get away with it, and that's why you got to be careful, because they're the bottom feeders taking advantage of people that have their hands tied.
Well, there's been quite a few. That's the thing. I'm seeing more and more distributors that are taking advantage of independent filmmakers, and that's another thing. That's one of the things that need to stop. And I want to go back before real quick. I don't want, like, I'm sure there's some listeners, I don't want people getting it twisted, like as if if we submit our film to festivals and we're just hurt by the fact that we weren't selected. It was obvious that that wasn't going to happen regardless, because I mean, I like working in the business, I already know like who's gotten invites to those things, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like I know full on, yeah, you send them into the festivals because you want to feel a little optimistic about it, but chances are you're not going to get in regardless. And I already know firsthand that that's the process,
Some of these festivals are $200 something, and
Yep.
yes, we did make the mistake of submitting, and then when you check to see if they watched the film, you get your letter of sorry, you've been denied here, your rejection letter. And then you check the analytics, nobody's watched it.
Yep.
And
Nobody watched it.
Yeah, I reached out, and then I said, well, nobody watched it. Oh, well, we have on record that one person viewed it. Okay, so it comes down to one person. So even if that one person actually did watch it, which they didn't, it was a lie, and they refused to give you your money back. So that's also another scam that we're facing.
It is.
And then if it's one person, how do you decide? How does one person decide?
That's another thing too, is that some of these deals that are going around too, is that people will put like a package together of movies. If you don't get any upfront money, like, your movie could be packaged with like 10 other movies, and somebody might get a nice chunk of change for that packaged movies, but that money doesn't go to you or the other filmmakers with the distributors and everything. And, before you know it, you sign your movie away, and it's just kind of like you're kind of like faded in the dust.
And they have exclusive rights. That's another thing everybody who's making an independent film should watch out for, is beware of exclusive rights. And there's loopholes in the contracts, because when the exclusive agreement expires, they can sometimes automatically just renew that without you even having any say.
There's a lot of unfortunate people that might be listening to the podcast, that don't know. And, we like to give people, sometimes there's people that you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. There's people that have no idea what's going on, but you know what? We'll just have full control over our product.
And in terms of our investors for this movie, Joe and I we worked and saved money to make this. And then we had a couple of friends and family put in a couple of bucks, but that was really, where we got the money. It wasn't.
Yeah, that's how we got, well, with the funding. Yeah,
I do microblading. Joe and I both have our tattoo licenses, and we both, for survival jobs, I do like cosmetic tattooing, so eyebrows and stuff. So I told Joe, I said I tattooed a lot of eyebrows for this movie.
Yeah, she worked hard, and I spent the next 6-7 months on the computer in post production, because at the end of it was
Joe did everything. Joe was a one-man show. He edited the whole thing, hours at the computer, crippled.
I did the effects.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you got Sasha Blank, who did the music, the incredible music, and Martin, who was our sound mixer at the end of the day. He was the last person on board who really turned it up completely. Like, it just changed the whole movie when he sound mixed it. But
And we were very fortunate because we found talented, dedicated people that believed in the project that weren't in it for the money. And that's why they were in it for the project. And that's very hard to find. You might find somebody that's in it, but they might be very new. And, you know, you don't really know. I'm not saying that they shouldn't work because everybody needs to start somewhere and have experience. But we were lucky enough to have people that were experienced and you know, and we're willing to do the work.
here's another point to make out to the newcomers: don't believe anyone that promises you the world.
And no deal is done in a pressure cooker, because we were pressured and we didn't fall for it. So everybody look out for that too. No deal is made in a pressure cooker. The real deals are made you know, in your own time. You're not told you have 10 minutes to sign a contract.
I have so many original ideas, but it's just they're just relying on the remakes and the reboots.
I was going to say, you didn't
and
get the memo. Nobody wants original ideas.
No, nobody wants that.
No.
Because everybody's like, oh, look, something shiny. Everyone's like, you know, and I love Dory from Finding Nemo. But, you know, you put that light in front of her, she forgets. But let's just put it out there in the universe for everyone to hear. The distributors don't know shit.
Our hopes now are just to get so that Mentally Apart gains some recognition. That's really where we're at right now. You know, we put it on Amazon. We're going to release it on Prime for a little while, see how that goes, maybe get some recognition and see if that'll give us the opportunity to maybe do the next project. You know, and that was really our hope, was to use it as a springboard, like you said, to say, okay, this is what we could do with 7K and like 2 crew members per day. What can we do? You know, is somebody willing to take a chance on us for the next project and give a bigger investment? You can't get the job without the agent, but you can't get the agent without the credits. So
Yep.
where do you
Or
go?
like the credits
Exactly.
or something like that, you know, and then, you know, where it turns out you look out for people, but yet they don't look out for you. That's another thing that's changed, I feel
Well,
like.
and the role of agents has also changed, because they're not so much agents or representatives anymore as they are gatekeepers. And their number one attitude is, we don't care how good your script is. What are you paying my client? Because I want to make the most commission.
Yeah.
But to wind this down, I wanted to say also, let everybody listening know, where can they find your film? Where can they find you?
Okay. So you can find me. I have my website, joepomarico.com, JoePomarico.com. You'll find, you know, my bio and some short films that I've done, and a few interviews here and there. And the movie Mentally Apart is out on Amazon. It's in the US and the UK and Germany. And
It'll
soon
be coming to Japan very soon.
Yes, we're just waiting on the subtitles to be completed.
And real quick, what do you have coming up next?
Well, what I've been working on before Mentally Apart was a Western script I wrote, and we'll be directing. It's called "That's Just a Jingle Away." I actually wrote this script inspired by my wife, Christine, you know, and other women who have been victims of sexual assault. And I wanted to tell a female-led revenge story, and it doesn't play like your typical Western. I have an agent I freelance with. It's Christine, one of Christine's agents freelances with. He showed the script to some producers, and they said to me, or they said to him, I'm sorry, they said, okay, you have a Quentin Tarantino script, but who's Joe Pomarico? And not that I'm like I write like Quentin. It's just that it's what it is. It's very witty, but it is filled with, you can't really categorize it in any genre. You know, Western setting, yes, but it's a drama. It's action packed. It's funny, but I wanted to write a movie that represents female empowerment, but it's for men too, also to watch. It's not just for a female audience. And I actually was on this path, writing the script before the Me Too movement, before the Harvey Weinstein scandals went public, before Time's Up. I already had written this script, and then once all this stuff happened, I'm like thinking like this should be the perfect time for a movie like this to be made, and that's where the big budget comes into play. And so I've been in development for that for a couple of years now, and that's why we did Mentally Apart, because we wanted to just like, all right, we don't have $10 million to make the Western. So let's just make a feature and show what we can do, and maybe somebody could see that and say like, holy shit, like how the fuck did they do this with this amount of money, and let's see what they can do with like you said, $1 million. And one more thing, also, we are working on a comedy series as well. Christine and I, and Chris Roach, who's a dear friend of mine, and he was on that show Kevin Can Wait. So we're trying to get going on that. Christine, do you have anything you want to?
Nope. I'm just very thankful that you had us on the show, and we're really grateful that, it's wonderful to speak to like-minded individuals and filmmakers. And I think what you're doing is amazing. And I'm very thankful for, this opportunity to come on. And it was really great, speaking with you and everything. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And my regards to both of you for the same. Because this is important for other people that are out there to know what you had said earlier, and that is you're not crazy. That we're out there and we're all experiencing this, and sometimes you feel like you're being gaslighted, and that's the underbelly of this industry, where the illusion is that they all want to celebrate individuality and creativity. No, they don't. It is a machine.
After all this, basically for anybody that's trying to make a movie, that wants to make a movie, and your first time, like we've already had experience, so we can't be fooled by people that would try and take advantage. But you gotta, be very careful. Do your research.
If it sounds too good, it's because it is.
Yep.
Yeah. That's basically what it is. And make relationships, network.
Yes.
Even go intern on a production job if you can, just that's how I started.
Check out my cinema blog on horrorfuel.net and download Dark Matter TV for your Apple or Android devices.